Blessings on all your viewers, and thanks for joining us in the grace of God.
Did you not answer my question? You're avoiding
See,
it
it's
in the
for viewers to decide.
classic democratic fashion.
It's for the viewers to decide. Let them decide.
Okay. But then you're a missile, all right. Intelligent or artificially intelligent, whatever. Okay. So that's a consensus. So we start with a consensus and we go down the difficult road. Okay, let me start with the missile. Your good friend Xi Jinping, whom you the other day you called him the most stupid man in 200 years in China. I don't agree with it. Nobody should agree with it, in fact. Otherwise, you will be the hidden, not the others. Xi Jinping has already announced, and he has agreed. Incidentally, it seems he's agreed with Aristotle that democracies are all nonsense. They don't work, and it's only the Xi Jinping model that works. And it seems that people like Biden and people like Rahul Gandhi, by trying to do a regime change every day, and Biden in trying to kind of kick out his mandate every day, and everywhere else. I think the situation in democracies has led to a situation of anarchy, as Aristotle had predicted. So, where do you see this going? The Xi Jinping way or the
First,
democratic way?
let's understand what these people mean when they say democracy. Today, everything's become democratic. Okay, if transgender people aren't, if you don't enact absolutely ridiculous measures to protect transgenders, you're undemocratic. If you crack down on press freedom to spread fake news, also you're undemocratic. You throw press people in jail for financial crimes they may have committed, that is also undemocratic. Basically, there's a new definition of democracy from everything from smoking cigarettes to cutting your toenails today. Okay, so in that particular context, Xi Jinping is absolutely right. Democracy, what you're seeing in America today isn't a democracy, it's a crying farce. But what is the democracy as we understand it in its purest form? It's a republic, not a direct democracy, because a direct democracy is a mobocracy, where you give them either 4-year terms or 5-year terms or something like that. People rule in those 4 or 5-year terms, and they have to put themselves up for election every 4 or 5 years, or 7 years, as the case was once in France, once upon a time. Right? So either or. That is democracy. The state doesn't take a back seat. The state is front and center in all of it, because the state represents the will of the people. When you say the state should take the back seat, you're saying the people should take a back seat and corporations should take the front seat. That's a bloody ridiculous argument. So it doesn't work that way anymore. So when we look at it, why talk about Aristotle? Let's look at the Mahajanapadas here. The entire story of Amarapali is how democracies destroyed themselves. So Ajatashatru, or is it Bimbisara, I forget who, depending on the story, falls in love with Amarapali, sows the seed of discontent within the Lichavi Confederacy, and then they open their own gates to the Magadhan army when it comes. तो दूर काय का देखना. Rome destroyed itself, Greece destroyed itself, every single one of our own Mahajanapadas destroyed themselves. And the reason there is feudal interests, commercial interests, they become bigger than the state. So the threat to democracy, so Xi Jinping is right in that sense. But he's confusing what a democracy actually means. But remember, the West is also confusing what a democracy actually means. I think there is some kind of a stasis. You can't keep shifting the definition of a democracy. I am very clear that it solidifies where the state is front and center, and it keeps getting elected, re-elected with universal suffrage every 4, 5, 7 years, whatever.
Okay, so where do you put the definition of democracy, Vibhuti Ji?
With after the missile firing away, I have to take either duck the missile or seek God's grace. So having said that, there are certain things we must not ever ignore, and that is the truth, the reality, the hardcore reality. And as I read somewhere, it was a remarkable statement that academicians have many names for government structures: monarchy, communism, socialism, democracy, and whatever else. And they all exist somewhere or the other, right? It's not that any one of them has disappeared. But there is always really one system that operates. It's a very crude analysis, but perhaps a right analysis that we need to spend some time on, whether it's true or not. And what it said was the world has always been ruled by a small group of men with cunning, strength, deception, and drive to take the reins of power. So whether the power shift keeps happening all the time between the democracy, whether the ruling class, the bureaucracy, and the business class, we have known about this. You know, James Bond movies, from the first one till the last one we saw, has always had a villain who is a multi-billionaire oligarch. He lives in the space or he lives under the ocean, but he wants to control the world. So that is the real politic of this scenario. Systems evolve. We all know that democracy is the best of the worst systems available. So Z is right to push his own agenda. The concept of a controlled democracy, right? You know, where he controls all his people to do what they want to do, and he wants to advance that cause, saying that the Western democracy is chaotic. There is no discipline. But at the same time, a time has come to re-evaluate the whole process. You know, this re-evaluation is very important. Just as Z is pushing his own agenda, it's time for India to also talk about, is Sanatan Dharma the way to go forward? Establishing and recognizing the scientific truth and the validity of what is going on can't be denied. Have we reached a scenario where what Abhijit was doing, the cross, or I do this, that particular impression is going away now? You know, how can you define certain things if we do not know the truth? So my thought process would be that the moment we ignore the historical truth, then that chaos happens. It has been historical precedents that there has been a monarch, there has been a ruler who has to do the dirty job of governance. He always does it in the name of Praja and people. The middle class always pays the taxes. And they live in the palace or 10 Downing or Rashtrapati Bhavan or wherever, or someplace. So the structure essentially remains the same if you look at it. The implementation and how it works in a given scenario is critical. And now, thanks to technology, we are experiencing a completely new system now. Because there are no holds barred. Who would have known us but for the advancement in technology today? Who would be listening to us if they were not willing to listen to an alternative point of view? So there is a major thing going on, and I think democracy is on trial. I would put it that way. Democracy is indeed on trial. Look at America. They have created a woke culture in a manner that they're weakening the belief of people in every single institution. Defund the police. And Biden is, of course, he doesn't even know whether unless he reads the note from his jacket pocket, he doesn't know what he's supposed to be talking anyway. So there you go. Democracy is at risk. It is on trial. And it's time for whether China's Z's controlled democracy or India's Sanatan Dharma, the truest form, gets forward. Let's see which agenda goes forward.
Well, Abhijit, I've said this many times to you also that the basis of democracy was based actually on the mechanistic universe principle, taken into social sciences, and then taken it all the way into what is called democracy. But Islam is very clear. It says that democracies are not allowed in Islam because the principle of equality doesn't work there. See, men and women cannot be equal. Then the believers and non-believers cannot be equal. The owners and slaves cannot be equal. So there cannot be a question of any democracy based on voting system. So it has to be the way the Shariat prescribed. It was the same way in Christianity. The very fact that today's your today's war cry makes us all heathens, other than you. By the way, Vibhuti Ji, Abhijit changes his war cry every day, this Jesus war cry only for today, and tomorrow it will be maybe Durga Mata ki Jai or whatever.
Oh yeah, I know him a bit.
Okay.
So, see, with Islam and Christianity, it's
Let me complete. Let me
different
complete.
paths.
Let me complete. I just digressed, trying to educate Vibhuti Ji about your war cries. So the democracy, the modern democracy, as they say that it originated in the West, but it is unreal because the society does not believe in equality even in the West. And you can see that even in the woke culture, a basic strain is intolerance and inequality. Because those who are woke, they say that they will cancel all of that. That is basic Christianity. That is actually, according to me, is surfacing itself all over again. The only place where everyone, not just everyone, in fact, goes to the other extreme, every being, and sometimes it goes to the extent of saying all animate and inanimate being are equal, is a principle only in Sanatan Dharma. So, isn't it a bit weird that we are trying to adopt the democracy of the kind that actually is artificially planted?
Look, every religion, I think the issue always remains in Islam, you've got the freedom because who interprets the book? There are hundreds of interpretations of Sharia. Same in Christianity, same in Hinduism. I personally feel it's an ebb and flow based on where you go and how you do it. So in Islam, it is much clearer that you're not allowed to adjudicate the word of God. So the way the Algerian FIS, the Islamic Salvation Front, I think it was called, Fédération Islamique Salvation, the way they described it was one man, one vote, one time only. Because men get to vote once and then you can't re-adjudicate the word of God. And after that, you don't get a democracy. In Iran, it's different. The Guardian Council, because they dictate what is Sharia, they will keep course correcting a democratically elected government, and the democratically elected government doesn't get in the way of religious matters. Christianity, they've completely discarded it, right? I mean, you tell me any Christian country right now that is, in this day and age, a dictatorship in that sense. They're not. In India, we've got this thing where you're right, it is an artificial this thing, but the question is, what is artificial exactly? Because religions evolve. If this is the kind of response that we've come up in the last 1,000 years to our own subjugation, it's not come out of a lacuna, right? It's not one person telling us what to do. We've adopted that lock, stock and barrel into our collective mindset. And when people pass off rubbish like, say, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, everybody accepts it.
Yeah, but the interpretation of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is different in the material plane and different in the consciousness plane. And what they're doing is that they're importing the definition of the consciousness plane into the material plane, and that creates distortion.
But therein
I've done quite a few episodes on that.
So therein lies the problem. If you are transposing one that is meant for another world and onto this particular world, it is doing what Indians do best: cut, copy, paste without context or geography or knowledge. That's not one man doing it; it's a collective stupidity doing it.
Yes. Uh,
I mean, tell
that's
me,
quite right.
who has the guts? Who has the guts to call out people when they say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam?
I do.
I'm talking about ministers in the cabinet.
Okay. You make me a minister of the cabinet, then I will.
Correct. Maza aayega.
Yes, you're right. That's why they're saying that why were poor fellows Ravi Shankar Prasad and Javadekar dropped when they had actually no independent action permitted? Vibhuti Ji?
I
Yeah, you're saying something. Okay. Abhijit, you're saying something. You stopped midway.
no. I'm not taking this cabinet reshuffle seriously at all. It's a joke. Okay, it's cosmetic change because we know who decides everything out here. It's all pre-written decisions where you only have rubber stamp ministers. You're going to see this in terms of, look at IT. I think forget Prakash Javadekar and Ravi Shankar Prasad, because see, they got all the flack for everything when they had control over nothing. You will see. अब देखो कि अब देख तो अगर एक साल में, if the syllabus, the history syllabus isn't revised, who are you going to blame? You're still going to blame Prakash Javadekar, or you're going to blame the new minister? What was the constant there? Narendra Modi. What was the variable there? The minister. Now, same with IT. आप देखो अगले 2 हफ्ते में, if you don't go after Twitter, you will know who was behind it. Ravi Shankar Prasad और मोदी. ये तो आपको पता ही चलने वाला है. And you've seen the new minister, IT minister is also railways minister. Now, I don't know what the connection between railways and IT is. Unless you want to railroad IT or you want to send IT down a coal shaft. So literally give them the shaft. I don't know. So I'm not taking this joke of a cabinet reshuffle seriously.
Anyway, that was aside. But yes, what is an episode with Abhijit without these asides? Vibhuti Ji, okay. What's your take on that? My previous question, that same question is addressed to you.
Now you have given me time to forget that question, so kindly repeat.
Well, I was talking about the what is called democracy wedded with the Islamic principles or Christianity principles or Sanatan principles, and
Yeah, got it.
said that
No,
the Western democracy is actually an artificial implant in India.
It is an artificial implant, in my opinion, because there is a concept of equity, equality is a fake concept, in my opinion. I'm beginning to believe that. Because I'm going to demand, as a woke person from America, that both Abhijit and I deserve a mohawk cut of Sanjay Dikshit's hair implanted on us. Then we will have 3 mohawks, equity and equality established. Everybody has hair on the head, and we are happy. But it's not going to happen because people exercise choice, right? I will never have a mohawk style, and you will never surrender your hair. And Abhijit can keep intellectualizing it as much as he wants. So the question here is, it is an artificial plant. We have, unfortunately, particularly in the Indian context, religion definitely dominates the conversation. Religion has its base on fear and ignorance. And what is miracle? Miracle is when the miracle gets over when science and technology steps in. That's simple as that. Birth of a baby was a miracle at one time. It's no longer a miracle. It's actually not. It's God's grace, maybe, but God doesn't produce a child. Man and woman work hard towards doing that. That's the reality of that. So the question here is, we must keep religion delinked from the governance part of it, which is there in the Indian way of life for a very long time. And religion was used in a very different way because there was no religion; it was Sanatan. So religion comes from the Christian and the Islamic way of life, but even in democracy, religion has been kept aside. There is a constitution. So the question here is that in Indian case, for example, when people talk about diversity, I have said this. We are examples of diversity. If you want to learn something about diversity, spend some time in India. We are a truly diverse nation with 20 plus states, each state having its own language, own eating habits, and also clothing patterns, prayer patterns. We all differ. So in India, to have imported that is a flaw. And I think we must push forward in this particular era the concept of Sanatan for the world to embrace, because ignorance and fear is going away. And that's where religion is taking a backseat or a flag. And the organized mafia is trying to assert itself. So I would say that in talking about democracy, how it is used, is you and I are all part of the bureaucracy, governance, and business. We have been part of all of it. This is the tripod that runs the mechanism, and you have journalism to come there. But you know now, and we know now, that because of digitization and digital age, the whole business of journalism has gone through a six. We know the truth that they peddle, right? Their truth, so to say. So if Rana Ayub is screaming that if she were in India, she would have been persecuted, everybody knows it's a lie, right? It is a narrative that she's building. So you are looking at a questioning of a system. And that's what is important. And it is these questions that bring about the potential of a new form. And I'm saying, if Chinese are pushing their controlled democracy concept, it's time for us to push our own Sanatan principles, which is actually the world beholds.
Okay, Abhijit, my contention is that the greatest threat that democracy faces is from the lack of bipartisan consensus. After all, the democracies came with bipartisan consensus. Now, that bipartisan consensus has gone absolutely through the roof in almost all democracies. And everybody is just angling for power. And right from the day the winner of the election takes over, the regime change, the strategies and tactics, they get going. And that, according to me, is the actual threat that democracy faces, and that will be the end of democracy. Like Rahul Gandhi and Rafale, for instance. You've been talking about Rafale, and he's been talking about Rafale, I think, just an example, Rahul Gandhi and Rafale. And the moment Modi gets elected, he starts with Rafale all over again. Of course, he could have better strategies, but the whole idea is regime change, no matter what the mandate is.
But see, I disagree here.
Okay.
I would say a bipartisan consensus is actually very harmful to a democracy, because then people don't actually have a choice. It's a uniparty system with two pretenders. I'd much rather have vicious non-bipartisanship, as in vicious polarization, where you get what you want, all of what you want. That's a much healthier system.
Yeah. So you support Rahul Gandhi in that matter, is it?
Well, if that's what the people want, they'll never. If it's that, let's be clear about one thing. Narendra Modi is just as socialist as Rahul Gandhi is. Rahul Gandhi's big problem is he's also dumb and vicious. People want socialism; they don't want dumb and vicious. So the way it's bifurcated in India is you have Lenin, not vicious Lenin, vicious nasty Lenin. People don't want vicious nasty Lenin. They just want nice Lenin. And they've got nice Lenin. He's called Modi.
Okay. So the nice Lenin Modi. And now I pointedly asked you about this whole business of, this is an example, this is a template that is happening in most democracies. When I say that every now and then he comes up with Rafale, because he could come up with something better, He just comes up with Rafale because he wants.
He doesn't have an
regime
agenda.
change
He's dumb.
the day one.
No, it has nothing
He
to
just
do with
wants a
regime
regime
change.
change.
No.
And then
If
he
he
teams
wanted
up.
regime change,
He
he
teams
wouldn't
up
bring
with
up Rafale.
everybody abroad.
Sorry,
He teams
Sanjay,
up
no.
with people.
No. If he wanted regime change, he wouldn't bring up Rafale because nobody votes on Rafale. He would have brought up something more interesting or something that actually titillated the population. He's not. So he's very clearly not serious on regime change.
You mean he's hand in glove with Modi?
Yeah, I keep saying this. I'm telling you, more from a party, BJP by itself is a 120 to 160 party. People say that Narendra Modi got it over the 272 mark. It is wrong. Rahul Gandhi got the BJP over the 272 mark. Rahul
Okay,
Gandhi
so
is the one that needs to be in cabinet today. The BJP owes more to Rahul Gandhi than they do to Narendra Modi. It's that simple.
well, Vibhuti Ji, that's an entirely new angle to the whole situation. So, would you agree with that?
Rahul Gandhi is Modi's minister without portfolio.
Yeah.
It's only in India Indira Gandhi created a portfolio without anything, a minister without portfolio. क्या कर रहे हो? कुछ नहीं. So the concept of कुछ भी जो आया है, it's a very remarkable concept. And sometimes in politics you make allies, and I think Prime Minister Modi made allies of Rahul Gandhi on that fateful day when he told him मिलते रहिए. उसके बाद से राहुल मिला ही नहीं है. You remember that part of it, right? So the question here is very simple. Like you brought in now, Rahul Gandhi is not killing democracy. Let's put it this way. He's enjoying democracy because it's only in democracy that you can afford to have this show, of Rahul Gandhi. I don't know why anybody follows him, but he's endearing himself with his papugiri. Do I believe in his papugiri? No. I believe he's, like Abhijit had said earlier on, he's a pretty devilish character, in my opinion. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he's teaming up with people to upend the system here. But the important part here is that cabinet changes and other things, they are perfunctory, they're ornamental. When you want to change something fundamentally, you have to change from the root. Will it change from the root? No. Unless and until you bring about a different system altogether. If you keep playing with the system, tampering, tinkering, cosmetization, कभी ये मेकअप लगा लिया, कभी वो मेकअप लगा लिया, उससे change नहीं होता है. And it's a very simple example. If you want to lose weight, you have to go into a regimen, a discipline, and a commitment to lose weight. That's what is required. So what is required in India? I think in the Indian context, India is fighting, I've said so before and I'll say it again, an existential threat to itself. So is democracy the way it is being run in a manner that it benefits India? That's the question that people need to evolve. And there is nothing like a bipartisanship in politics. You can have as many opinions as you want. It's only in America you have Democratic Republic, Libertarians and others. Green parties are not even allowed to talk. They won't even get the seat on the debating platform. So there is a structure. And I go back to my original opening statement. There are few people who run the system. It's like I learn a lot from movies and sports and James Bond movies. Moonraker kab bani thi? Elon Musk ab ja raha hai. Think about it. With technology has advanced so much that somebody in Houston today, by use of a computer, can open a hatch on a spaceship millions of miles away. So that is the kind of world we are living in. And I think it is a serious discussion to be had. And I think whether it changes in my lifetime or not, I do not know. I hope it does in your and Abhijit's lifetime, that something else does come up, something more fruitful. Otherwise, you will have the cantankerous elements of what we are seeing in America, wokeism. उसको नया नाम है उसका बेवकूफी, उसको बेवकूफी कहते हैं ना. The wokeism tradition.
वो तो आप कहते हैं, वो wokeism, ask the wokes and ask the Democrats, ask the birthing people and ask the seeding people.
They also know, they won't admit.
Okay, and I take Abhijit back to what he started with. He started with the example of the Magad Republic of Ajatashatru and the Lichavi Federation. And that was that old famous case of the Republic. When Ajatashatru attacked, they started debating how to counter him. And by the time they could finish the debate, the people had opened the doors of the Lichavis to the Ajatashatru's army. Now, when you have an adversary like China sitting on your border, and not just sitting on your border, actually breathing down your neck, and you are busy with your democracy, how far will it take you?
I didn't understand the question.
I just took you to the example. Xi Jinping says that this is the best system. And I'm saying that when China and India are clashing, India is having a democratic, fractious democratic system where the biggest opposition party is actually trying to pull your leg all the time. It's just in the manner of what was happening in the Lichavi Federation. And there is that adversary who was totally primed to defeat you and to get at you without any inhibitions, whether you will prize democracy or you will prize nationhood and junk democracy and
Look, there is no nation without
national power.
I think India without a democracy will go down a shithole. Okay, we'll break up in 15 to 20 years max. So no question of that. The issue is what we're looking at with the Congress party today is not a democracy. It's a joke. It's a circus. We need a democracy, but let's be very clear, the opposition isn't providing that at the moment. So it's really a question of getting your democracy back on tracks, and it's a question of getting a strong opposition party that isn't a sad, pathetic joke where every intelligent member is deliberately incentivized into becoming dumb so that they can cater to their dumb clown prince's worldviews. Okay. Unfortunately, the clown prince doesn't see beyond his own nose. His strategic vision is limited to here. So, he reminds me of, the Maya in Central America. They had a very curious notion of beauty. When the child was born, they would tie a thing to the forehead, put a stick and dangle a little ball off of it. So the child would grow cockeyed like this. Sadly, that child is Rahul Gandhi. Can't see beyond here. What can we do? Democracy is in threat today because the Congress party is weak and it's led by an idiot. You want to get proper democracy back in this country, put somebody useful in charge of the Congress party. Somebody who actually challenges Narendra Modi for power, not a joker who is acting as Narendra Modi's B team. Tell me, what is the difference between Asaduddin Owaisi splitting the anti-BJP vote and Rahul Gandhi consolidating the BJP vote? In fact, Asaduddin Owaisi is team C. Rahul Gandhi is team B. Actually, Rahul Gandhi is team A. They are the crack commandos, the Oberkommando of the Third Reich. The Schutzstaffel Oberkommandos or the Russian, what was it called? The Spetsnaz. So the Congress is the Spetsnaz of the BJP. Asaduddin Owaisi is team B. So when you have a joke like this, how is it a democracy? To have a democracy, you need to have a strong opposition, which we do not have. If we did, the government would actually be held to account. Every time Rahul Gandhi opens his mouth to quote unquote hold the government to account, people start laughing. The reaction should be, प्रधानमंत्री जी हम आपको राफाल के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. The reaction should be, बंदा ठीक बोल रहा है, हमको भी सुनना है, क्या करना है. But when Rahul Gandhi says, प्रधानमंत्री जी हम राफाल के बारे में सुनना चाहते हैं, the reaction is अब क्या करोगे? जोकर है.